It feels good that fantasy MLR is rolling. Well, at least for two of us here on the Fantasy Rucker Show. Two happy campers, one not so much. But either way, we break down all of the fantasy MLR performances from week 3, plus much more. The Fantasy Rucker Show starts right now.
Where rugby and the world of fantasy sports collide. Welcome to the Fantasy Ruckers Show, bringing fantasy rugby to the masses, talking all things rugby from the MLR to leagues around the world. We're on top of it. Headphones on, pads off. This is the Fantasy Ruckers Show. Now, here are your hosts, Ryan Yee, Matt Yee, and Devin Vanderpool.
What's up, everybody? This is episode 186 of the Fantasy Ruckers Show. Thank you so much to our Fantasy Ruckers League members, our community members, and everyone else tagging along on this journey of making fantasy rugby a reality in MLR with you this week. As the boys are back, we're feeling good. Fantasy MLR is rolling. Matt Yee here with me. I am Ryan Yee. Devin Vandy Vanderpool is going to join us in just a bit. Maddie, feels good that fantasy MLR is back. Had a little bit of a, what's the best way to put it? Let's say a journey to get to this point. But let me tell you, it didn't feel, it couldn't have felt any better to have gone through our first weekend of fantasy MLR, knowing that we'll be stressing over the players, counting those points, and then obviously tabulating those results earlier this week. Man, gotta say, no better feeling than hitting that button there to see all of the fantasy results come out. And I know our fantasy managers in all of our TFR leagues felt the same. Maddie, how's it going?
Yeah, man, it's good to be back. It's good to be back. I was off for a little bit, driving across the country, and had to catch up on some MLR. But yeah, it's nice. It's nice to be back now. I'm back in the swing of things with the boys.
Yeah, I know that it's been a journey for you as well as you get settled out west. But maybe that was able to maybe take some of the pain off of what I started the show with, saying that we have two happy campers on the show,
Mm.
one not so much. I will say and preface that the TFR boys came out with a big dub against the return of James Dealey of MLR Stats in our OG league. But two for three when it comes to the hosts on the listener league. Maddie, our lone, I guess, loser on this show, as
Mm.
Maddie and or Vandy and myself both racking up dubs in the listener league. Maddie, you not so lucky.
Well, you know what? It's the way she goes sometimes. It's fantasy. Sometimes, sometimes you win, sometimes you don't. It didn't help that, the New England Free Jacks Old Glory DC game just happened to start. I got my old Pacific Eastern times mixed up. And yeah, so couldn't start any of those boys, and that was awesome. So hey, it is what it is.
Yeah, well, there you go. But hey, either way, it does feel good to be back on a jam-packed show. Obviously, going to be breaking down all those games. Going to be going over our first waiver wire breakdown of the year. Of course, then go through and look at the slate of week 4 matchups coming up. Got a little bit of a TFR betting challenge coming up with Vandy later in the show, as well with a new segment that we have with Vandy. Hoping to share his thoughts and his expertise when it comes to dabbling in the world of fantasy MLR as someone who learned the sport through this fun game that we play each and every single year. So we're going to get right into it. But before we do, if you aren't already, follow us at the Fantasy Ruckers, handles up above. If you're listening on the pod, can be found in the description down below. Got a Discord community that has been popping off here to start off the season. And also, of course, have thefantasyruckers.com, the official platform for fantasy MLR here on the Fantasy Ruckers Show. Drop a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Interact with us. Leave a comment on your thoughts on any of the topics that we bring up on this episode 186. With that being said, let's get right into the news.
News dump.
All right, TFR episode 186 news dump. And Maddie, as we know during this time of the year, not so much news happening when it comes to outside of the match weekends, but we will get into further depth on this show about this game between Anthem Rugby Carolina and the Seattle Seawolves. But I do want to take a moment to give a big congratulations to Anthem Rugby Carolina for not only obviously in their first week racking up that very first win in franchise history, but now
Hmm.
getting that match at home, winning at home for the first time ever.
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing a team turn around and just be an absolutely, I guess I don't even know how to say it, like the Jekyll and Hyde of
Mm,
what they were last year. So it's great. It's great to see the fact that Anthem's winning. I think I expected it this year that they were going to be winning a lot more than they did in the past. So yeah, great to see them getting their first win and looking forward to seeing some more wins this season.
yeah, absolutely. I think the question is now how many wins this team is going to get, not obviously if they were going to be able to get a handful of wins this MLR 2026 year. So again, we'll break that down and the fantasy performances in that match in just a bit here. I wanted to give a shout out now next to a I guess new piece of hardware that has found itself in MLR, and that is what is now being considered the old mate. And it is something that has been fan or MLR fan inspired. In fact, something that was inspired by one of our very own TFR League members, and that is John Payne, a friend of the show who has been tracking this, I guess, hypothetical trophy that has been passed on from team to team, and it was California who had it coming into this week, and it was Chicago obviously coming away with the win, which again we'll break down in just a bit here, but it is Chicago that now carries the old mate. The big thing being about that it's cool to see that the MLR is implementing something that was fan inspired, and you go down the history of how this, I guess, hypothetical trophy has been passed hand to hand over the years. It's actually very, very interesting. And now it continues in more of an official format with it being recognized by Major League Rugby. So shout out to John Payne, someone who obviously we work closely with, was able to meet in the finals last year when we were out in good old Pawtucket. And it's cool to see that something that kind of he stirred up is now part of, I guess, the fabric of MLR and hopefully in its future history.
Yeah. I mean, you just love to see things that people are playing for. So love to see it. Whatever it is, a kettle, or whatever the heck they call it. Something to play for and something to add some meaning to games.
In the span of Maddie, the different types of hardware that has been implemented in the world of rugby, obviously the MLR, adding the shield to that list, and now I guess this, as you call it, a kettle or the old mate. Where does this rank in terms of hardwares that is hand out in the world of rugby?
Pretty far down, Ryan. Pretty far down.
It's etched very nicely, let me say. But hey, it's the sentiment that that is supposed to mean a lot, maybe not necessarily the actual piece of hardware itself. Either way, cool to see again. Lastly, here, I mean, got it. Maybe this is our tooting our own horn here on this show, but and maybe people don't think of this as huge news, but breaking news. Hey, there's a new fantasy MLR platform that we talked about earlier to start this year called Scrummy. Again, the traditional type of rugby platform, very similar to our weekly challenge that we had going over the past few seasons. And Maddie, we seem to be doing pretty well in that one, ranking across the board in all the leagues that we're in, including the nationwide league in Scrummy as the number one team throughout the first 3 weeks of the fantasy MLR season by quite a large margin after week three. I think by more than 30 points, which what can I say? We're pretty good at this thing, and we've been doing it
Yeah,
for some time.
we got some experience, that's for sure.
We do have some experience. So, hey, cool to see it again. We love fantasy MLR in all its formats. Always love to dabble in different ways. Obviously, we love what we do here on the TFR show and what we do here in the Fantasy Ruckers Circle. But hey, if it has fantasy on its name, we're going to give it a try. And that includes Scrummy. And hey, we're having a lot of fun doing it as a supplement to all the good stuff that we get to do here with the Fantasy Ruckers. All right. Speaking of those leagues, let's get right into a Supreme Commissioner Yee's league update.
Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye, hear ye.
All right, hear ye, hear ye. Here is Supreme Commissioner Yee with a Fantasy Ruckers League update. And Maddie, I do want to take the time on this Fantasy Ruckers League update, which I do feel like is one of the most important. I know I feel like I've said that the past few times here on this show when coming up to this segment, but obviously everyone understands kind of the challenges and the turmoil that we had faced over the course of the past couple of weeks to get Fantasy MLR going here this 2026 season. This is kind of the first time that we're addressing it here on this show since all of that happened. And again, I think if you check out the Discord, you can kind of see the journey that was traveled here over the course of the past couple of weeks to get to this point. But with that being said, we could not be more appreciative. I think that's the sentiment overall through going through all of it, of everyone's patience and everyone's kind of support through that whole and that fact that you guys all want to stick with us, Maddie, through that whole process. And I wouldn't blame people that the frustration of certain things that came up and changing from platform to platform and then ending up back on the website would obviously cause some of that frustration and maybe people to be a little bit deterred from fantasy MLR. We did not lose a single league member through that whole process. So,
Love it.
got to give a shout out to all of you out there for sticking with us. We really do appreciate it. Again, this is something that we have poured our blood, sweat, and tears into. It's a thing that we do in our free time as a hobby. The entire team, whether it's us here on the Fantasy Rucker Show between Matt and Vandy, whether it's our website guru in Alistair Kirschpool, who really does so much hard work behind the scenes that often does not get noticed. That should get noticed, that we do need to give a shout out there to all of our community moderators and Stephen Lowen, commissioners, all that good stuff. Obviously, the longer message on our Discord that you can read there about that sentiment. But again, just wanted to reiterate that here on this show of how much we do appreciate that support and how much we do love you guys for sticking with us and being a part of this journey for both the highs that we've had and obviously the lows that we've had as well. So shout out to all you guys and all the TFR community members out there. That's the big reason why we start off the show by giving you guys a shout out as well. Lastly here, enough of that, enough of the sentiment. We're moving forward here with Fantasy MLR. I know a lot of people are itching after that first round of matchups that happened, and heading into waiver wire, heading into the week 4 matches. IR and eligibility changes are incoming. Again, the waiver deadline is going to be Thursday evening. All of these things will be updated before that point in time. So you'll have the roster spots from guys who are on the IR and also guys that obviously have opened up the season in positions that we did not expect per se going to be all changes. So again, have a quick look at those rosters, have a quick look at those free agents and those waivers as those will be coming and changes will be coming throughout the day, mostly done on Wednesday, but definitely done by Thursday morning. All right, Maddie, let's get right into a look at the week 3 matches.
Quick Tap Recap.
All right, quick tap recap of week 3 matches this weekend. And we open up on a Saturday that is one that I feel like a lot of people always have marked on their calendar because no matter where these teams stand, no matter how lopsided it may seem heading into the match, it always ends up giving us a pretty good matchup. And I'm talking about the New England Free Jacks hosting Old Glory DC. First home matchup for the New England Free Jacks. They hoist their 3rd banner. Saw the pictures there, courtesy of, I know, Bill Baker, who is in our OG league and also runs American Rugby Rising. The guy that we co-hosted our championship final coverage with was there, and I got to see the banner that the Free Jacks were able to raise in their back-to-back, two-back championships. But Old Glory DC has a pretty good act at ruining those celebrations. Last year, beating the New England Free Jacks to kind of spoil the celebrations in their banner ceremony, doing that again this year with the victory of 21-19. Maddie, before I have you kind of dive into some of the numbers and some of the players that you wanted to make sure we talked about, for me, just an overall kind of game feel, something's up here with New England. And I know that New England has in the past historically in previous seasons been known for their slow starts and have had people doubt them heading into this portion of the year, but this feels different. A lot of change, a lot of different faces here on this squad. Mistakes during the matches that we didn't typically see in matches before. The cohesion feels not there, and ultimately cost them the game in this one, where I do feel like it was DC that capitalized on a lot of the mistakes that New England failed to capitalize on themselves in terms of DC's mistakes, and really just play a less error prone match that led to the 2 point victory there for Old Glory DC. And even then, just scraping by the what's the saying, the nail of their teeth, or the teeth of their nail. Well, what's the thing? Something like that.
I don't know. You should know. But yeah, I mean, we've seen this from New England before. I think somebody said it best. I forget who, but that the fact that it's a shorter season this year, um, you don't have enough time. Like it's no longer a marathon. It is a sprint to try to win as many games as possible in a league that doesn't have many teams. New England is going to find themselves really on the back foot here, really scrambling to try to win out the rest of the year at some point. So hopefully they can get it together, and we'll see how it goes.
Is it, in your opinion, at this point, panic mode for New England fans where, hey, like this isn't a team that feels like they're of a championship caliber at this point? I know we're only 3 weeks in, really only 2 weeks in with that opening week having only one match. But again, to that sentiment, they're the only team that still does not have a victory here to start off the year.
Yeah, I think if you ask New England fans, I think they're feeling absolutely fine. 2 games in, they'll find their way. It's a class franchise, so they'll figure it out.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about here some of the players, though. We'll start with the victors here in Old Glory DC. And I mean, you got to start off the guy that headlined our team of the week here for the best fantasy performance, our first 20 plus point performance of the year. And that is tackle machine. And I guess in this game, try machine as well, Corey Daniel. I mean, in the full 80 that he played, 36 meters gained, but you add 2 tries to that and 20 tackles, doing what he does best, supplemented by the scoring ability. And now in back-to-back games, he has 16 tackles in week 2, 20 tackles in week 3. Again, if this is a guy that's available, a guy that's going to be playing, this is what you expect. The floor is so safe. And then if he's able to tack on tries on top of that, this is a guy that can easily, on a weekly basis, have the opportunity to hit that 20 point ceiling. And if you're a Corey Daniel league member that drafted him, you're feeling pretty good here after week 3.
Yeah, I mean, this is what you get him for. You get him for the 20 tackle games, and he'll put up 20 tackle games for the rest of the year. Yeah, maybe you won't get this 21 point outing, but you're going to get 10 points. You're going to get 7 points. You're going to get a good solid floor, like you said, Raya. So, yeah, you love to see this out of him.
Other guys performing well, not making it onto the team of the week, but still solid fantasy performances. Aiden King with 13.6 fantasy points. Maddie, this is a guy that you were very high on.
Mhm.
Obviously, in his NOLA days, he was the guy that you thought should have been rookie of the year last year. He's not getting the full 80-minute opportunity, obviously, with the depth that DC has on their back row, and Aiden being the kind of younger guy in there. It's not surprising to see him being subbed out at that 60-minute mark. And I know that a lot of fantasy managers would hope that he'd at least hit that 70-minute mark when he does start. However, kind of like a poor man's Corey Daniel, where, yeah, okay, he's not going to get the full 80, but in back-to-back games, he has 14 plus tackles, and that's pretty impressive there. You add 3 breakdown steals over the course of those 2 games as well. You're starting to think that maybe King has that floor as well, that fantasy managers can be pretty confident in plugging into their lineup, even knowing that he's going to get subbed out before that 70-minute mark.
Yeah, and I think if you give him 20 extra minutes, he'll get those 4 tackles for you. So, yeah, Aiden King. I mean, I called it at the start of the year. He's going to have a good season this year, and it seems to be starting that way.
Yeah. Perry Humphreys, 10.5 fantasy points there. The big stuff coming in with the 61 meters gained and the 8 tackles on top of that. A guy that kind of has always been notably able to reach around that threshold. But the one I want to talk about here before moving on to the New England Free Jacks is the last double digit Old Glory DC performer and our halfback of the week, and that is Jason Robertson with 10.3 fantasy points. And the reason why, Maddie, I want to bring him up is because with Jason Robertson, the expectation was with the removal of kicking points was going to be tough for him to reach that fantasy value. But it does appear, though, that he's getting involved and he's doing more than just the kicking that is giving him some of these fantasy points. Week two gets 8.7, largely off the back of 35 meters gained, a try assist, and 9 tackles. In this one, though, 52 meters gained, which is great to see. And somehow at the fly half position, racking up 17 tackles is there. Not something that you can expect there from Jason Robertson week in and week out. But what does appeal to me is the fact that he is attacking with the ball with now back-to-back weeks with above 35 meters gained.
Yeah, I mean, you like to see that. You like to see involvement there. It seems like you said, right, the kicking is not taking as much of an impact, and we've always seen him get involved. However, maybe a bit more so this year.
Yeah. All right. Moving on to New England Free Jack side of things. Nathan Salmon, new New England Free Jack player, the New Zealander, the Kiwi, looking good in this matchup. He was probably the bright spot for the New England Free Jacks in this one. 16.9 fantasy points, our back three player of the week in 70 minutes played, scores a try, and on top of those 90 meters gains, get 8 tackles as well. Yeah, if he scores, he's going to give you these points. And that's going to be the question, kind of the mindset of back three players overall. Mitch Wilson with 10.9 is your second double digit scorer here. I think he's looking like a pretty safe play there with New England Free Jacks and really getting double digit performance each week. And then that's rounded out by Oscar Lennon with 10.3 fantasy points, who did get a cheeky, I guess, classic scrum half try where it just happens to end in his hands in a good sequence of plays there, just following the play as a 9 and reaping the rewards from it, racking up 10.3 fantasy points in that case.
Yeah, like classic 9. Love to see it.
Love to see it. All right, let's move on now, Maddie, to the second matchup of the weekend. First on Sunday, Anthem Rugby Carolina and the Seattle Seawolves. Carolina hosting Seattle in this one, and to many people's surprise, Anthem coming out and showing again. And even the bookies, we'll talk about in our TFR betting challenge, still doubting the Anthem Rugby Carolina squad. I will admit and say here on the show that I was doubting them heading into this matchup. It's just hard to pick them against a side that in the Seattle Seawolves has been here for so long and has established kind of their game style and has been a notable contender here in MLR for quite some time. But hey, you mentioned it, Maddie, at the start. Jekyll and Hyde. It is definitely a turning point here for Anthem Rugby Carolina. And I guess the biggest question is, are they now being taken seriously? Is this a team that you need to understand is going to be one that not only is going to have a handful of wins this season, which again we were even questioning heading into this year, but that can contend for possibly an MLR title this year?
Yeah, I mean, look, you're looking at the second place team in the league after 3 weeks. So, yes, they've played one more game than a lot of the other teams. But they've got 2 wins on the board, and that's a lot more than what 4 of the teams can say. So yeah, you love to see that. And I'm just happy to see them kind of at least exceeding. But similar with New England, we've seen Anthem kind of get off to a hot start and then run into depth issues when injuries come along. So I'm looking forward to see how they handle that. Obviously, they have a completely revamped roster, so you're hoping for that to impact them a lot less than it did last year.
Yeah, and we'll get into that at the end of the show on terms of the outlook of Anthem. And I think it's going to be very telling what the consensus sentiment with this team is when that line does come out here heading into the week. Again, 8.5 underdogs coming into the match against the Seattle Seawolves. They've been underdogs in every single match this season so far. They take on Old Glory DC this weekend. I think it'll be very telling what the general public's opinion on this team and how it's changed will be based on that line. So that'll be interesting. Seattle, though, hey, they now find themselves at 1-1 here with 2 matches to play. Obviously, a big win against Old Glory DC to start off with, but leaky there and just kind of undisciplined rugby leading to this 9-point loss. And a lot of people have been talking about the use of the RRS system and how there was a challenge put in place. And because there was not a correct capabilities to check that knock on, that challenge was kind of burned and it showed the deficiencies of this RRS system and the challenge. But again, we've touched on that. No need to kind of rehash that kind of thought and opinion on that. But again, overall, Seattle, they are dangerous dangerous. They got skilled players, but they are leaky in their defense at times, and often attributed to a lot of disciplinary issues that do cost them in the end.
Yeah, I mean, look, like discipline will kill you at times, and especially now that you're facing a team that has the skill to take advantage of it. Yeah, it's going to cost you even to the best teams of the league, like Seattle.
Yeah. No team of the week players from this matchup and this one, which was surprising despite kind of the larger score line. But I guess that just points to how big some performances were in other matches here this weekend. But the highest point scorer in this one on the Seattle side in Devon Rousseau, a first round overall pick. In a lot of leagues here this season, and he's doing his best to counteract the TFR curse because now in the two matches that he's played in with Seattle here to start off the year, he has racked up over 14 fantasy points in both of them, obviously with 14.6. This one, scoring his first try of the year, supplemented by 82 meters gained. And if he's on this track, it's going to be a no-brainer that Devon Rousseau is, if not the top fantasy player this season, is going to be among the top and would have been maybe our first player since Bodine Waka to break the TFR curse as a number one overall pick that does not bust. Did I jinx it?
Oh, it's 3 weeks in. I was enjoying the wordplay there, Ryan. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I don't want to speak too soon. I hate to do that to Devon, but
It's
it's a
feeling
little
good.
soon, Ryan. It's a little soon, Ryan.
It's feeling good. I mean, it
At
feels
least
good
he's
for
playing. That's better than a lot of these guys can say.
that is true. That is true. The other double-digit fantasy point scorer for Seattle Seawolves is Patty Ryan, who in large part got to that 12.2 mark with the try that he scored, supplemented by the 10 tackles that he also racked up as well. From the Anthem Rugby Carolina side, I think it's very surprising. Player that has been very, very consistent for them has been Julian Roberts, who starts the first two matches in the back three, starts this one at the center position at number 13 and racks up his highest point total of the year so far, 13.4 fantasy points in another match where he reaches the 80-minute mark, has a try and a try assist in this one in 39 meters game plus five tackles. Julian Roberts really seizing the opportunity with the Anthem after making the move from NOLA.
Yeah. I mean, look, Julian Roberts has always had the ability to shine. I think we've always seen glimpses of it in the past previous years. So I'm just glad he's getting his kind of full-time opportunity here with Anthem and showing what he's made of.
All right. Let's go on to the last now matchup of the weekend, the first Sunday night rugby match of the year, and that is the Chicago Hounds versus the California Legion. And it was shoring up to be what many people were going to think as one that was going to be a lot of fun to watch. But I think at the end, when you kind of reflected on how this match kind of played out, the biggest sentiment is that it has been confirmed. The sentiment about the Chicago Hounds team heading into the year, about them being favorites, about them having the most stout squad heading into the season, and now find themselves as the only team to have not lost a match yet and dominantly win this one 48-24. Chicago is scary. They can score. They're well-rounded. They are not just that kind of hard-nosed team that we've known to Chicago to become, but when you have players like Tavit Lopetti, when you have playmakers that can do things off the ball, they now supplement what many people have talked about their physical style of rugby with one that is also dynamic, that can reach the 48-point threshold.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting to see. I'm really interested in kind of what the Chicago Hounds team is doing. And to put that type of performance on a Sunday night rugby, yeah, it's great to see and makes it look really well for the fact that they had the finals in Chicago this year.
Yeah. And I mean, at one point, like I'm thinking is like, how often is it just going to be that the team that, or the town that hosts the final is the town that gets to automatically get to the MLR Shield, obviously being Pawtucket last year with New England being there and ultimately winning. And now Chicago this year, it is looking like it is the path. To Chicago for Chicago, if that makes
Mm.
sense. California, though, Maddie, you have been the guy that has been spot on with this, and I got to give you your flowers when they're due. And this is a team that finds himself at 1-2. they've scored a whole bunch of points. In fact, they've scored the most points in all of MLR. However,
Well,
they have also allowed the most points in all of MLR. So with 93 points for, 92 points against, they lose this one by a large margin. It's not surprising in the style of play. And when you're already not consistent, or when that style of play is prone to inconsistencies, and you or then supplement that by more inconsistent play of just simple stuff that should be executed, and tack on kind of the lack of kind of solid defensive play, this is what you get. And California is now kind of looking outside in, and what you would thought had some pretty solid players there, and now are kind of maybe reflecting and thinking, huh, maybe we got to get back to the drawing board and figure out how we can, score a lot of points while also not allowing a team like Chicago to put up almost 50 points on you.
yeah, I mean, like you can't, you're not going to win anything as long as you're letting up the same amount of points that you're scoring. They'll have to figure it out. I'm sure they will. But I mean, we've seen California Legion, or whatever the heck they're called in the past. They don't tend to figure it out on defense, that's for sure.
Yeah. Got to give a shout out to three particular players here. On both, or I should say, all on Chicago here as our three players of the week. At the front row position, you got Theo Furry, who is looking like he's going to be the number one front row player just based on opportunity, right? Like, I mean, he's on the best team. He's going to be starting every single match. None of this Anthem business where you got Seth Smith starting one week, then you got Campbell Robb starting another week, just a headache for fantasy managers. But Theo Furry is going to be starting your lineup. He's a solid player at that position, and in this one scores two tries that leads to a 10.6 fantasy point performance. And even having a floor, like in his first match that he played in round two, where he didn't score a try and still has 8 tackles and 22 meters gained for 6.6 points. I mean, Theo Furry is looking like a fantastic pick. And if you kind of went that route in team construction where you wanted to have that advantage, Theo Furry looks like the guy above the rest when it comes to tiers, for being that. You agree, Maddie?
Yeah, I mean, it seems that way. I think again, it's early in the year, but yeah, it does seem that way that he's kind of pulling away with being that number one front rower, for sure.
At the second row position, and a guy that we'll talk about in just a bit here in the waiver wire breakdown, but Thomas Caceres at 12.3 fantasy points at the second row position. Again, just doing fantastic things there. Is our second row player of the week. And then I want to give a shout out to Tavit Lopetti. Again, kind of the signing that blew up all of the signings right off the get-go here. And in two straight matches, starting at outside center for the Chicago Hounds, he's been solid. And in a 10.4 fantasy point performance, has now tries in both the games that he's played with Chicago. Tavit Lopetti, I think, is a fantastic, fantastic play if you manage to nab him in your drafts. And he looks like he's going to be a pretty solid piece for you with there. And that tandem of Devoto and Lopetti is part of the reason why Chicago looks as good as they do. And that's turned from that physical play to now a dynamic kind of offense that they can run.
Yep. Yep, for sure. 100% agree.
Lucas Rumble, though, is the highest point scorer in this one. 19.6 fantasy points. And just a fun tidbit, Andrew Coe, who's now in our OG league, who has Lucas Rumble on his roster, told me that he texted him before, just to make sure that his fantasy point performance was going in. And I was just like, those are some big words of encouragement there, Coe. You must have texted him to say that you'd share the fantasy MLR winnings if he ends up winning this thing. So maybe that added a little extra motivation. But all kidding aside, though, Lucas Rumble, again, he's been a mainstay of this league, and now with 19.6 fantasy points with 2 tries, 41 meters gained, and 15 tackles, not a surprising performance from him. On the California Legion side, though, Ed Timpson with 15.1, Lance Williams with 13.4, and then good to see Joe Mano get back on that board there with 11.6, scoring his first try of the year, and then rounded out there for the California Legion guys. In the double-digit performances there between Timpson, Williams, and Mono there for those three guys.
Yep.
Pretty good. Pretty good. All right. Let's get into now the waiver wire breakdown to talk about, hey, now that you've seen those three matches played, there's some holes that I know some fantasy rosters need to fill, and they'll do that this week in our first waiver wire breakdown of the year.
Waiver Wire Breakdown.
All right. Waiver wire breakdown. We're going to give you some options here at every single position, all of them below 50% owned. So, have a look, see if these guys are available. But first, Maddie, I think the large sentiment here, obviously, a lot of volatility in MLR. Obviously, lineups frustrating at times when you're seeing guys not in play. Where is the line for guys that you had high draft capital on and are expecting them to make big impacts but are not in the lineup versus guys that you're kind of going to make a decision to maybe drop here for any of these guys we're going to talk about? Some of the names that I'm going to go down the list: Jordan Jackson Hope doesn't start for Old Glory DC this week. Wayne Vanderbank coming off of the bench. Nick Chan is a guy on California Legion that was a high draft pick in many leagues. Doesn't start this week. Had a good performance in the first week. Rufus McLean, haven't seen him. Peyton Wall, rookie of the year last year, haven't seen him play either. Where is this line, and how do you approach this, especially in a year where it's so short? These moves need to happen. When do you hold, and when do you kind of say, it's time to say goodbye?
Yeah, look, I think it really depends on where you draft them. Like if you draft them extremely high, you might want to wait a little longer. Like Jordan Jackson Hope, a guy who's drafted pretty early. Yeah, you're going to want to give him some time just to understand. Like we know the league isn't as transparent as we wish they would be. So you just want to give it time to understand exactly why he's not in the lineup. When it becomes a recurring issue, when it becomes a Kunatani issue, then
Mm.
yeah, then you have to make that decision. For me, when it comes to guys like Rufus McLean, Peyton Wall, Nick Chan, like even Nick Chan, like to me, they're always drop candidates, pretty much, unless like if there's a guy who's better, you're always going to drop him for him. I think it's more so those guys that you're drafting in the first two rounds that require a little bit more decision making.
Yeah, and I guess that's the difference between fantasy MLR and other fantasy sports is like the threshold of like that high draft capital is definitely different. Like we're talking about top two rounds, like even third, fourth, fifth round, Maddie. Like you got to start thinking that you can definitely drop some of these guys. So yeah, Jordan Jackson Hope, Wayne Vanderbank, those guys I think hold a little bit longer. You want to wait because Wayne did look good. Wayne looked good when he got onto the field. It's just that he wasn't starting, and there may be strategies in the future where, hey, even if they're not starting, and you're desperate, it might be the play to just play Wayne Vanderbank rather than some of these options that we're going to talk about. But either way, let's get right into the waiver wire breakdown here. I open up with Cali Martinez here for the front row pickup of this week. Only 14% owned here. And the reason why is kind of like what we saw with Jake Turnbull last year, and that is just a really, really solid floor. Obviously, the prop is not going to be in those try scoring opportunities when the scrum does arrive, but this is a guy that has been hovering around the double-digit tackle mark, which has given him a great floor. 8.7 fantasy points in week 3. Love to see it from the front row position. I think Cali Martinez is a great streaming option, especially against Anthem Rugby Carolina this weekend. If you're, one of the Ramiro Gurovich, Seth Smith, Campbell Robb owners that you're kind of needing to pivot, or any of these other front rowers that you're just not getting the opportunity, Cali Martinez is someone that you know is going to be in the lineup, you know is going to have a floor, and he's not going to burn you. And again, Maddie, one of your buddies, a guy that we've had on this show before, playing at UBC, a good guy to add to that if that's going to be the decision maker here to get Cali Martinez on your team.
Yep, that's for sure. Yeah, love the guy, good guy. He'll definitely find a way to contribute for sure.
Second row option, Thomas Caceres right there with me. I think they're Maddie for this one here. Obviously, fit when a second row player is scoring 15.9 fantasy points and is a regular starter on the best team in MLR, you're going to pick him up. Under 30% owned, you got to go get Caceres if you need a second row player. If you're a Sam Gala owner who's been on the bench here to start the season, I would 100% look at Caceres going in there for that. I would actually drop a decent amount of fab, not saying anything ridiculous, but around the, 7 to 10 range on Caceres, especially if you're a second row needy team. I do think Caceres is a long-term option for you, knowing that he's on. Just to touch on fab with Cali Martinez, wouldn't drop too much on that. Streaming option at best. Obviously would prefer to have a hooker there, but a guy that you can plug in your lineup. Lance Williams is my back row waiver wire option this week. Again, under 20% owned, is starting for the California Legion here consistently. And I think the 21.9 fantasy points that he scored here this season so far is something that kind of shows you the upside that he can have. We've seen what Lance Williams has been able to do with Utah. If he's given the opportunity, he can score. And again, not someone that I'm going to be dropping a lot of fab on, but someone that I definitely want to monitor, because if California starts getting better and better, I do think Lance Williams is going to be a big benefactor of that. I know it's a deep side that has Timpson, Houston, but the Poitevin injury with him going down, I think Lance Williams is going to be even more emphasized with the opportunities that he's going to have going forward.
Yeah, I like that, especially with the injury to Poitevin. I think opportunity is often where we see guys shine.
Absolutely. All right. Halfback position. And this one's an interesting conversation, Maddie, because I think going into the season with the removal of kicking points, it was going to be this dynamic of half or scrum half or fly half. Like what is the best strategy here? And I think it is starting to emerge that maybe the 9 position is the way to go here without the kicking points, because it's a little bit more balanced out. The opportunity, especially for guys that kind of have, I'm not saying are going to be like Gonzalo Bertranu, but are going to have that mentality of trying to attack when they can. And a great definition of that is Andre Warner. Surprisingly, 50% owned here. And
Mm.
has 22.7 fantasy points on the season so far, and is a guy that's going to attack. I think where the insurance comes in and the concern, there was never a lack of doubt of what Andre Warner was going to be able to do. It was the opportunity. And now that we've seen JP Smith start on the wing to open up the year, and then now on the bench here this second week, there is a chance that JP Smith starts this next week, but it's hard to find myself that you're going to be benching Andre Warner after the performance that he has. And he's eventually going to get out there once again, because it does seem like Warner is the kind of 1A per se in this lineup.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like Warner is just picking up where he left off in his past couple seasons, just being an absolute beast.
Yeah, have a look at Oscar Lennon as well on New England.
Mhm.
A guy that's also around 50% owned, 16.1 fantasy points on the year. Kind of same thing. I know that it's kind of subsidized by that try that kind of lucked out with being in the right place at the right time and following the play. But again, not all nines do that. You can't take that advantage. And Lennon did look good. I did like how he distributed the ball and had a lot of time there with New England as well. Center position, a guy that surprisingly is under 20% owned, Ben Lesage. And I get it that he wasn't in the lineup to start off the year, but is the captain here in this week, has 8.7 fantasy points. And just Maddie, you've mentioned it before about him, just his aggressiveness and like the tackle numbers. Like he's going up on that line and he is going to be physical, and that's going to give you a great floor. And if he's able to add a try on top of that, like he'll be able to hit a ceiling that's pretty solid. Again, the center group is one to monitor because there's a lot of options there with New England with guys like Keenan Higgins, Wayne Vanderbank, Ben Lesage, Killian Coughlin, all making appearances there. But Lesage has been a mainstay of that New England Free Jacks lineup, and I expect him to be one throughout this season. And if he's out there, I mean, a great stash on your bench, because if he kind of solidifies that, he can be definitely a fantasy point contributor for you on those off weeks.
For sure.
Uh,
Yeah.
and then lastly here, back three, the back three play. I think what's emphasized, Maddie, to me with 6 teams, like it is slim pickings out there. These waiver wire picks are hard, and it
Yeah.
was emphasized by the back 3 position because there's not a lot of options there. A lot of them are scooped up. Not surprising because those are your point getters or your ceiling getters there. So I was kind of scrambling for this one, and this one I'll say is with Seattle. Now having back-to-back kind of appearances both on the wing and in the center position, which is part of the reason why I'm leaning toward this guy, and that's Nolan Tuamoa-Hialoa.
Nice.
I think that was good. No one owns him in any of our leagues. Go pick him up and just stash him, because if he's a mainstay on this lineup, hey, that's a good sign for you. And the state that back 3 is in, if you need one, that might be an option to look. But let me tell you, it is slim pickings out there. Maddie, you like that overall? Any tips of advice when it comes to putting your bids down here this waiver wire?
No, I mean, I like it. I like your picks, right? I agree with a lot of them. And yeah, I hope it turns out for the people.
All right, we shall see. I know there might be a couple handful of guys that will be placing bids on here in our TFR OG League. All right, let's get into a final wrap and a look ahead to week 4.
Rucking Rundown.
All right, time for our Rucking rundown. This is often my favorite time or part of the show when we get to stack ourselves up in terms of the records that we're going. And so far, 3 weeks into this, 7 matches played. It is Vandy once again in last. 4-3 for him, but it's a tight one. Maddie, you and I are tied with our picks at 5-2.
Okay.
So it is a tight race in this one. We'll have 3 more matches this weekend here to settle the score after 4 weeks of play. A total of 10 matches played overall. It starts on Saturday, no Friday match, and that is on April 18th at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Anthem Rugby Carolina takes on Old Glory DC. Anthem Rugby Carolina at home. Going to be interesting to see. In my opinion, I think the general consensus is going to sway where Anthem Rugby Carolina will be the favorites in this one. However, I do talk about it just a bit in the TFR betting challenge, what you need to look out for if that is not the case. But Maddie, overall thoughts of this match and ultimately who you're picking in this one?
Yeah, I mean it's an interesting one with both of these teams coming off huge wins. Um, yeah, but I have a tough time still. I don't think Anthem RC does it back to back. I think Old Glory DC kind of carries the momentum from that win. Get another one against Anthem RC, but I'm sure it'll be a close
All right, I'm hopping on the bandwagon. I'm going with Anthem Rugby Carolina in this one. Might bite me in the butt in this, but
one.
either way, like to be different here, and they are at home, and it's exciting to see this franchise starting to string together a pretty successful run of games. So Maddie and I split on this one. All right, on Sunday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, Chicago Hounds hosting the New England Free Jacks. This one's easy for me. New England doesn't look that great. Chicago, complete opposite, looks damn good. I'm playing all of my Chicago Hounds in this one, and in turn, picking Chicago to win this match pretty easily, I think.
Yeah, I'm with you here. If it was week 10, maybe I would have a little bit harder of a time. But yeah, as of right now, I think Chicago Hounds take this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe I'm going through these picks. I'm like, maybe it's the recency bias that's hitting me hard. And I feel like I'm swaying. And the thing that makes me probably emphasize that recency bias most of the team we're going to talk about here is the California Legion hosting the Seattle Seawolves. Seattle didn't look great in this past matchup. California also didn't look great. However, for me, there's always that kind of possibility. And I swear, Maddie, I promise, this is the last week I'm doing it and believing in this Legion side. If they burn me this time, they burned me with cash last week. I'm going this week. California Legion at home, beating the Seattle Seawolves. It's not that they look terrible. It's just that they need to minimize those errors. And I get saying that with a 48-point burner put against you last week against the best team is not a way to go about that. However, I do think that the Seattle team is a team that they can capitalize on with their disciplinary issues and a team that is often as inconsistent as them, at least in the showing in that last match. Legion can do something here. I do think this is going to be a close one, though.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I don't see it being too close. I just think Seattle will figure out their issues from the last game and really put it to California. Yeah, when you can't play defense against a solid team like Seattle, it's going to cost you. So yeah, I see Seattle taking this one.
All right.
I think comfortably.
All right, split on the two. Shared opinion on Chicago going to be interesting. All right, well, that being said, though, a fun slate of matchups here this weekend, but also a fun slate for us to make some bets on. And for that, we'll obviously bring on here Devin, Vandy, Vanderpool for our TFR betting challenge, plus some insight into those fantasy managers that are playing fantasy MLR for the first time. And with that, it's the man, the myth, the legend who joins us, Devin, Vandy, Vanderpool. Man, we started off this show by kind of cherishing or I guess relishing in our wins. Obviously, the fantasy Ruckers team getting the
Mm-hmm.
big dub here against
Mm-hmm.
the return of James Dealey in the MLR stats. But for us, now that we have the listener league where we get to take ourselves head on, it gets a little bit of fun. And we got to make fun of Maddie earlier in the show where among the three of us, the only one to not get the W, you, the defending champion in the listener league, doing pretty well this week, huh?
Come on now. You know what? I had to. I talked all that smoke that one episode. I was like, I gotta at least put on. I put up the most points. You know what? Luckily, thank God I needed to do that. Now from here on out, it's no more talking shit. Just get lucky.
There you go. Well, hey, no, and you mentioned it, man. You came in with the heater. Not only did you talk all that smack heading into it, but you, I guess, walk the walk, talk the talk, and yeah, like you
Hmm.
said, put up the biggest point total this week. I apologize to the team that is named the Leftovers. That is Stevesy in our Discord, who you
Sorry,
took
buddy.
head on and gave the pleasure of giving the beating, I guess, on his very first listener league experience.
He put
He's
up a good week. He put up a good week.
put up a good week
He
against
just
any other team. You would have been definitely a fighting chance there, but just no match for you, man.
sorry, buddy.
How good does it feel to start a fantasy season with a win like that in any
Uh,
fantasy sport?
you know what? You can't win them all if you don't win the first one. So, it feels great. You always want to start it with a win. 1-0 feels great. 0-1 doesn't. That's just the way it is.
It's just the way it is. I mean, we went through it, and there were some bad beats this past week when it
Yeah,
comes to
Maddie got
some lineup
smoked. Sorry,
decisions.
bud.
Yeah. So either way, Vandy, I guess as of now we can call you the wagon, and you're the man to take down here in the listener league as our defending champ. But with that being said, though, for those of you who are brand new to this show and maybe brand new to what the Devin Vandy Vanderpool brings to the table here on the Fantasy Ruckers show, ever since we started this thing, it's kind of funny. It revolves around you, Vandy. This whole thing basically revolves around you in terms of how we wanted to create this thing as something that people could use to teach rugby to people who have never experienced the sport. And before heading into this thing, Vandy, you were a guy that outside of maybe the short highlight clips I showed you in college when we were roommates back in the day, your rugby experience was what? Zero, you could
Oh,
easily say.
I had more time watching the Haka than I did rugby. I can tell you that.
There you go. And well, hey, 5 years later, in our fifth season of doing this, I think a lot of people would say the growth of you since that day one has been spectacular. And it's all been through the lens of fantasy MLR. So, brand new this week, Vandy, what we're bringing in here is Vandy's fantasy MLR tip of the week. We have a handful of people that are trying out fantasy MLR for the first time. A lot of them obviously having rugby experience, but there are a handful as well who are in your shoes, Vandy, just like you were 5 years ago, where they don't have any rugby experience and they just love fantasy sports and want to get into the pain that is this type of fantasy sport here with Major League Rugby. So, with that being said, Vandy, our very first fantasy MLR tip of the week. What do you have to say for the people coming off of that very big win and outside of the Kevin Garnett meme that is anything is possible? What's the other tip that you got?
So I would say the tip would be, oh, I had it on the tip of my tongue and I just forgot it, right? Oh my God. Give me a sec. Keep talking. Oh,
Stalling.
it would be, you know what? When we're talking about bad beats, it would be don't panic. If you put up a bad week, don't just drop guys just to pick up, waiver wire points. It's never worth it. It's very similar if it's the first time playing, MLR rugby, the way we're doing it, or if it's the first time playing fantasy at all. It's just never a good idea to panic pick up like that. Wait it out, wait 2, 3 weeks, then make calls. Especially with us, we ruin the first round or the first overall pick every year, and it takes. Obviously, you're gonna have to wait on those guys, but don't panic pick up.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more. I mean, the worst feeling is when you drop a guy and you see the next week him just popping off because you've made that
Yeah,
decision
exactly.
out
Just
of
a
out of
brash
anger.
decision.
And that's a thing that applies to all fantasy sports. I know Maddie and I discussed some drop candidates earlier in our waiver wire breakdown, but again, a handful of guys that we mentioned, big name guys in that list that a lot of people are probably thinking about dropping. Just got to hold on a little bit longer just to give you a little bit more confirmation bias in terms of what to expect here the rest of the season. But hey, that's not too bad of a tip there to start off here, Vandy, as we get people more involved in fantasy MLR. Though, speaking of bad beats, the TFR betting challenge, formerly known as Devin's Degenerate Dambles. This one was a tough week, but hey, Vandy, let's get right into talking about the cash.
TFR Betting Challenge.
All right, TFR betting challenge. This is the time where Vandy and I go head to head and make our picks. Obviously, earlier in the year, we're dabbling in other rugby leagues around the world, but with MLR, it's a whole nother beast. And it is, Vandy, before we get into it, this is our first TFR betting challenge of the year.
Yes, it is.
It was refreshing the past few weeks, laying some of the money down on the line about, obviously we dabble in the football betting and the hockey betting and the NBA and the major sports here. It
All
is
the betting.
very, very funny to see, yeah, basically, the lines that come out and just the volatility extending to the sports books when it comes to MLR. About really nobody knows anything. And it's interesting to see how that develops over time. And it's something we're going to talk about here. But man, when some of those lines open up, it is kind of a polarizing feeling when you're like,
Hmm.
that is a smash. I'm going that all the way to how the heck did that thing come out and you end up getting beat or the other way around, which we had a mix of over the past first few weeks. It's been a refreshing feeling to see that it is a different beast when it is something that you're betting on when it is Major League Rugby and not the power four sports you would call
Yeah, I mean, dude, I think I got lucky this week. Last week was just a brutal, like just brutal. I think I lost both, but I got lucky this week with just Anthem showing up, baby.
There you go. Hey, you hopped on the wagon. That's the right thing to do, at least for the first 3 weeks heading into this one. So where it stands right now, all right, Vandy, you have laid down six total bets, one parlay. I've got five in. I'm 3 for 5. Vandy,
Mm-hmm.
you are 3 for 6. That parlay of
50%.
yours did not hit. So far, I've put down $36. Vandy, you've put down 45, and you've won 54 around dollars. Out of that, I've won around 46. So net total, I'm actually in the lead here by about a buck. I've won almost
It
$11.
was last
Vandy,
week, man.
you're just under 10. And yeah, that last week, this past week 3 got you back in and you hit big. You cash in on both your picks. You have Anthem Rugby Carolina covering the +8.5 against the Seattle Seawolves. And then you also go with the spicy total there as well, which has been something that is growing in
Mm-hmm.
popularity with the 50.5 in the Chicago California Legion matchup as well. For me, I was getting cold feet. A lot of people were saying, "Hey, smash that 8.5 with Anthem Rugby Carolina. That is something to jump on." I was
Dude.
like, I don't know if they can do that against Seattle. I went the other way and thought maybe California Legion would be able to pull in, especially off of a pretty solid showing last week. Complete opposite. I went full in. Legion's getting a tick in my bad books because not only do they not cover, I tried to go in with the small bet to see if they can maybe get the upset win with the +300 odds. Not happening. So lose a lot of money this past week, but Vandy, you gained some traction there. Pull within one. Makes it fun. Keeps it in. So it'll be interesting to see what the lines do come out this week. Again, from the pattern that we have been seeing, those lines are usually coming out the morning of that match happening, which is what it was seeming like. So instead of trying to predict or hypothesize or talk about hypotheticals and lines, Vandy and I in these segments are going to talk about what we are hoping or expecting or reacting to if we see this weekend. And for me, Vandy, the big one is the storyline that we've been talking a lot of here on this show and in this segment particularly is Anthem Rugby Carolina. We talk about how the books eventually catch on and eventually find that information. We all know you can't beat the books. You can't beat the guys that are laying down the
They
lines. There's
come
a
back
reason
for
why
you.
they make so much money. Exactly. And again, that was like the sentiment, man. I was feeling good, right? I was
Mm-hmm.
I was 3 for 3 heading into this week. Hadn't lost a bet. Feeling good about the Legion line and just get absolutely pantsed in front of everyone in front of that with me talking in the Discord and everything like that. Where
They
Vandy, you go,
remember every dollar they gave you.
yeah,
Every
I
dollar
know.
they give, they take two. Just remember that.
Yeah, exactly. So good mindset to have. But I guess going into this weekend, where I'm hoping that maybe we can still find an edge against these books, is really trying to pinpoint and lock in on that Anthem Rugby Carolina line when they go and face Old Glory DC. It's interesting because Old Glory DC obviously coming off of back-to-back wins and have opened up the season looking quite good. Or I should say they opened up with a new or follow it up with a New England Free Jacks win after a tough opening loss on the season. But let's see if that momentum rises. But again, focusing on Anthem Rugby Carolina, they've come in as underdogs in every single matchup, and they have proven every single matchup that the doubters keep on doubting, and
Mm-hmm.
we are going to take advantage of that. So, my question here, and it's going to be answered in a handful of days. What do we see with Anthem Rugby Carolina? Do the books finally catch up on? And maybe this is me too late hopping on the bandwagon, Vandy, that you hopped on this past weekend. It might have been the last chance, and it was something that we talked in the Discord about being a possible last chance. But hey, if they're underdogs again by a large margin. I would say anything more than a try and above with Old Glory DC. I don't think that's going to happen. And I would honestly, with the way Anthem's being playing, if they're underdogs, period, that'd be something I am looking at. But again, I have a feeling, though, the books are going to catch on this weekend after they open up their season with back-to-back wins here and are making a pretty big statement here for a franchise that before this season had never won a game in all of their history.
Yeah, I mean, you love to see it. It was nice money while it lasted, but that's how it feels. A good comparison would be the UFC when you got the juice on a young guy and he's knocking dudes out and you're betting that, and then all of a sudden Vegas finds out real quick, real quick.
Yeah, so that would be mine that I'm looking out for. So should be interesting. But either way, Vandy got an edge on you on a dollar here, and we'll see if I can pull away here. Because I know that you've been kicking my butt when it comes to the TFR betting challenge over the past couple years.
I'm thinking honestly, man. I get the Anthem one. I'm taking the over in any Legion game. Any Legion game, I think it's been 50.5, 51.5, 52.5, something like that every single game. And it is just money. It's hit against Anthem. They barely missed because the Free Jacks put up 5 points against them or something.
Yeah.
So then that one didn't hit. And then obviously the last one, the Hounds put up 48 themselves. The line was 50.5. The Hounds almost did it. So I'm taking the over with the Legion every single time.
There you go. They know how to score points, and that leaky defense definitely plays into that favor. But hey, we'll see, and it'll be interesting to see what Vandy and my picks are coming up here in Week 4's edition of the TFR Betting Challenge. Well, hey, Vandy, always good to have you on the show, man. Always good to talk some cash and some betting here, and also hey, daunting ahead to take you on in the Listener League. But hey, we're looking forward to the challenge.
I got you this week.
I don't know who you have this week. We'll have to see.
Oh, I was going to say, hey, sorry to whoever I got. We're feeling hot, baby.
Feeling hot. There you go. All right. Well, hey, always good to see you, Vandy. We'll see you next time.
Peace and love.
Always good to see the one and only Devin Vandy Vanderpool. Some interesting tips there. Some helpful tips and some bets that him and I get to go head to head on. And it feels good. I don't know if it's going to last, but being up on him by $1 into the TFR betting challenge far is not too bad. Well, Maddie, hey, a jam-packed show in this one. Feels good to be back in the groove. Feels good to have MLR, fantasy MLR back in the mix. And we'll see whether or not we can keep the run of wins going, or for at least for you, get into the win column for the first time this season.
There we go. Yeah. Hey, it is what it is. We'll get there. Long season ago. A little bit of a sprint here to get some wins on the board, but we're all good.
All good. All right. Well, hey, again, thank you to all of our league members again for sticking with us and for being here throughout the whole journey. And again, we hope that you guys can take some of the things we say here on this show and apply that to be successful in whatever league you may be in. All right. For Matt E, for Devin Vandy Vanderpool, I am Ryan Yee. And we'll see you next week on another episode of the Fantasy Ruckers Show.
Let's go.
You've been listening to the Fantasy Ruckers Show, bringing fantasy rugby to the masses, covering everything rugby from the MLR and beyond. We hope you enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review, and be sure to tell all your friends. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, connect with us on social media at the Fantasy Ruckers. Till next time, this is the Fantasy Ruckers Show, signing off.